The sun was blazing down on Crescent Bay, creating a shimmering diamond effect across the water as I spread my beach towel out on the warm sand. It was one of those perfect summer days, the kind where the sky is an impossible shade of blue and the breeze carries just enough salt to remind you that you're exactly where you should be. I've been looking forward to this beach day for weeks, a much-needed break from the suffocating pressure of final exams and the endless cycle of college deadlines that had consumed the last semester. My name is Jamie, and I've always been the cautious one in my friend group, the planner, the worrier, the one who brings extra sunscreen and checks the weather forecast 3 times before leaving the house. Which is probably why I found myself so inexplicably drawn to Alex from the moment we met in freshman orientation 3 years ago. Alex was everything I wasn't. Spontaneous, fearless, with a laugh that seemed to invite everyone around him into whatever adventure he was planning next. His dark curls were perpetually windswept, as if the universe itself couldn't resist running its fingers through his hair, and his eyes, a warm amber that seemed to hold sunlight even on cloudy days, had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room when he looked at you. We've been friends for years now, part of the same tight-knit group that had formed during those first awkward weeks of college. But lately, something had been shifting between us, lingering glances, conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning, excuses to sit closer than strictly necessary during movie nights. I'd been trying to convince myself it was all in my head, that Alex was just naturally affectionate with everyone. After all, why would someone like him, someone who lit up every room he entered, be interested in someone like me? The beach was already bustling when we arrived, families with colorful umbrellas dotting the shoreline like confetti, the sound of children's laughter mixing with the rhythmic crash of waves. Our friends had claimed a prime spot near the volleyball nets, and I could see them waving us over as Alex and I made our way across the hot sand, loaded down with coolers and beach bags. "Took you guys long enough," called Mia, her long braids piled on top of her head in a messy bun. "We were about to send a search party." "Blame Jamie," Alex said, dropping his bags and throwing an arm around my shoulders. He insisted on making sandwiches for everyone instead of just grabbing something on the way. I felt my cheeks warm, and it had nothing to do with the sun. "Someone had to make sure we didn't all starve to death," I protested, trying to ignore the weight of his arm and the way my heart seemed to stutter whenever he was this close. "And that's why we love you," Alex replied, giving my shoulder a squeeze before releasing me to help set up the beach canopy. The next few hours passed in a blur of volleyball games, swimming in the cool ocean water, and lounging on towels with cold drinks in hand. I found myself watching Alex more than I should, the way water droplets clung to his shoulders after he emerged from the ocean, how his smile seemed to grow wider with each passing hour, as if the sun itself was charging him with energy. He caught me looking once and winked, causing me to nearly choke on my lemonade. It was mid-afternoon when it happened, the moment that would change everything between us. Most of our friends had wandered off to explore the boardwalk or were dozing under the shade of the canopy. Alex and I were alone on our towels, the conversation flowing easily between us as it always did. "Hey," he said suddenly, sitting up and rummaging through his bag. "Can you do me a favor?" He pulled out a bottle of sunscreen and held it out to me, his expression innocent but something playful dancing in his eyes. "I can feel my back burning, and I can't reach it all. Mind helping me out?" I swallowed hard, taking the bottle from him with what I hoped was a casual shrug. "Sure, no problem." My voice sounded strange even to my own ears, slightly higher than normal. Alex stretched out on his stomach, folding his arms under his head and turning to look at me with that half-smile that always made my stomach flip. "Thanks, Jamie. You're a lifesaver." I squeezed some of the sunscreen onto my palm, the coconut scent filling the air between us. For a moment, I just stared at the expanse of his back, the smooth-tanned skin, the subtle definition of muscle, the few freckles scattered across his shoulders like constellations I wanted to memorize. Taking a deep breath, I placed my hands on his shoulders and began to spread the lotion. The contact sent a jolt through me, like touching a live wire. Alex's skin was warm from the sun, and I could feel him relax under my touch as I worked the sunscreen across his shoulders and down his spine. I tried to keep my movements clinical, efficient, the way a friend would help another friend, but I couldn't help noticing how perfectly my hands seemed to fit against the contours of his back. "That feels amazing," Alex murmured, his voice slightly muffled against his arms. "You missed your calling as a massage therapist." I laughed nervously, my hands continuing their journey down his back. "Just trying to be thorough. Skin cancer is no joke. Always looking out for everyone," he said, and there was something in his tone I couldn't quite identify. Affection, certainly, but something else too. something that made my hands slow their movement as they reached the small of his back. I hesitated there, suddenly very aware of the line where his swim trunks met skin, of how my fingers were just inches away from crossing a boundary I'd never dared approach. Time seemed to stretch between us, the sounds of the beach fading into the background until all I could hear was my own heartbeat and Alex's steady breathing. And then, without conscious thought, my hands drifted lower, fingers grazing just beneath the waistband of his swim trunks. It was barely anything, the lightest of touches, but I felt Alex's breath catch, saw the way his muscles tensed slightly under my hands. For one terrible moment, I thought I'd ruined everything. 3 years of friendship destroyed by one impulsive touch. I was about to pull back, to stammer out an apology, when Alex shifted slightly, pressing back against my hands in what could only be described as an invitation. "You missed a spot," he said softly, turning his head to look at me over his shoulder. The playfulness was still there in his eyes, but now it was joined by something more intense, more deliberate. Let me explain why this moment mattered so much. In all our years of friendship, there have been countless opportunities for something to happen between us. Late-night study sessions where we were the only ones still awake, drunken parties where it would have been easy to blame any action on alcohol, movie nights where we'd fallen asleep on the same couch. But we'd always maintained that invisible line, that unspoken agreement that our friendship was too valuable to risk. Until now, with the sun beating down on us and the sound of waves creating a private soundtrack, that line had suddenly become blurred beyond recognition. My hands hovered, uncertain, as Alex rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow to face me. "Jamie," he said, my name sounding different somehow in his mouth, weighted with meaning. "I think we should talk about." Incoming. The shout was our only warning before a frisbee came sailing through the air, landing with a soft thud in the sand beside us. The spell broken, I jerked my hands back as if burned, nearly toppling backward in my haste to create distance between us. One of our friends, Carlos, jogged over to retrieve the frisbee, seemingly oblivious to what he'd interrupted. "Sorry about that. You guys want to join? We're starting a game down by the water." Alex sat up fully now, running a hand through his hair in a gesture I recognized as frustration. "Maybe in a bit," he said, his voice remarkably steady. "Jamie was just helping me with some sunscreen." Carlos glanced between us, a flicker of understanding crossing his face before he nodded. "Right. Well, whenever you're ready." He tossed the frisbee from hand to hand, backing away. No rush. Once he was gone, the silence between Alex and me felt heavier than before, charged with all the things we hadn't said. I busied myself with capping the sunscreen bottle, avoiding his gaze. "Jamie," Alex began again, but I stood up abruptly, brushing sand from my legs. "I should probably get some water," I said quickly. "I think I'm getting dehydrated. Do you want anything from the cooler?" A flash of disappointment crossed his face, but he shook his head. "No, I'm good. Thanks." I practically fled to where our friends had set up the food and drinks, my heart pounding in my chest. What had I been thinking? Alex was my best friend, one of the most important people in my life. If I'd misread the situation, if he hadn't actually been inviting my touch to linger, I couldn't bear the thought of making things awkward between us. For the rest of the afternoon, I managed to avoid being alone with Alex, throwing myself into volleyball games and group conversations with an enthusiasm that felt forced even to me. But I could feel his eyes on me throughout the day, could sense his frustration growing as I continuously found reasons to be elsewhere whenever he approached. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, someone suggested a bonfire. Soon, our friends were gathering driftwood and setting up a fire pit in a designated area of the beach. I helped arrange logs in a circle around the growing flames, still carefully maintaining my distance from Alex. The fire crackled to life, casting a warm glow over our little group as darkness settled around us. Someone pulled out a guitar, and soon the air was filled with music and laughter. I found myself relaxing slightly, lulled by the familiar comfort of friends and the hypnotic dance of the flames. I didn't notice Alex moving until he was beside me, settling onto the log where I sat slightly apart from the others. He didn't speak at first, just handed me a beer from the cooler, the glass cool against my palm. "Thanks," I murmured, taking a long sip to avoid having to say anything else. "You've been avoiding me," he said finally, his voice low enough that only I could hear him over the music and conversation. I stared into the fire, watching the flames lick at the wood. "No, I haven't. I've just been busy." Alex laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "Jamie, I've known you for 3 years. I can tell when you're avoiding me." He turned to face me fully, his features half illuminated by the firelight. Is it because of what happened earlier? With the sunscreen? I felt heat rush to my face that had nothing to do with the bonfire. I'm sorry about that, I said quickly. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. It was just... You think you made me uncomfortable? Alex interrupted, sounding genuinely surprised. Jamie, look at me. Reluctantly, I raised my eyes to meet his, and what I saw there made my breath catch. There was no disgust, no awkwardness, only warmth and something that looked remarkably like hope. You didn't make me uncomfortable, he said softly. Quite the opposite, actually. He shifted closer, our knees nearly touching. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you this for months, but I've never found the right moment. Or maybe I was just scared. Tell me what? I asked, hardly daring to believe where this conversation seemed to be heading. Alex took a deep breath, as if gathering his courage. That I have feelings for you. Feelings that go way beyond friendship. He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. Why do you think I asked you to put sunscreen on my back? I've been looking for any excuse to have you touch me. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, everything I thought I knew rearranging itself into a new pattern. You have feelings for me? I repeated, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. For longer than I care to admit, he confirmed, his eyes never leaving mine. I just never thought you might feel the same way. But today, when your hands... He trailed off, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. Well, it gave me hope that maybe I wasn't alone in this. The fire popped loudly, sending sparks dancing into the night sky. Around us, our friends continued their conversations, oblivious to the life-changing moment happening just feet away. The ocean waves provided a steady backdrop, as if urging me forward with each crash against the shore. You're not, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Alone in this, I mean. I set my beer down in the sand, gathering my courage. I've had feelings for you since freshman year. I just never thought someone like you would be interested in someone like me. Alex's brow furrowed. Someone like me? You know, I gestured vaguely. You're so vibrant, full of life. Everyone loves you the moment they meet you. And I'm just me. Just you. Alex repeated, reaching out to take my hand. His touch sent electricity coursing through my veins. Jamie, you're the most thoughtful, intelligent, genuine person I know. You see the world in a way that makes me want to be better. You're the first person I want to tell when something good happens, and the only one I want to talk to when things go wrong. His thumb traced circles on my palm. There's no just about you. The sincerity in his voice made my throat tight with emotion. For so long, I convinced myself that my feelings were one-sided, that someone as magnetic as Alex could never be interested in someone as ordinary as me. But the way he was looking at me now, like I was something precious, something worth waiting for, made me wonder how I could have been so blind. So what now? I asked, my voice unsteady. Alex smiled, that same smile that had first caught my attention 3 years ago, but now it held a new meaning, a new promise. Now, he said, leaning closer, if it's okay with you, I'd really like to kiss you. The world narrowed to just the two of us, the heat of the fire on one side, the cool night air on the other, and Alex's face inches from mine, waiting for my answer. In response, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. His hand came up to cup my cheek, holding me gently as if I might break. But I didn't feel fragile. I felt brave, braver than I'd ever been. I deepened a kiss, my hands finding their way to his shoulders, feeling the same skin I'd touched earlier but now with purpose, with permission. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and smiling, I became aware of a sudden silence around us. Looking up, I saw our friends watching, expressions ranging from shock to knowing smiles. It's about damn time, Mia called out, breaking the silence and causing everyone to burst into laughter. Alex's arm slipped around my waist, pulling me closer to his side as he grinned at our friends. You all knew. Dude, you've been making hard eyes at Jamie for years, Carlos said, rolling his eyes. We had a betting pool going on how long it would take you two to figure it out. Who won? I asked, feeling strangely lightheaded with happiness. That would be me, said Sophia, raising her drink in a toast. I said it would happen at the beach day. Something about all that exposed skin and sunscreen. She winked at us. More laughter erupted, and soon the conversation shifted to other topics, our friends accepting this new development with the ease of people who had seen it coming long before we had. But Alex kept his arm around me, and I leaned into his warmth, still hardly believing that this was real. As the night wore on, the fire burned lower, and people began to pack up their things. Alex and I volunteered to stay behind and make sure the fire was properly extinguished, both of us clearly wanting a few moments alone. Once everyone had left, promising to meet for breakfast the next morning, Alex pulled me down to sit on the sand with him, wrapping a beach blanket around our shoulders against the cool night air. The ocean stretched out before us, moonlight creating a silver path across the water. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was all a dream, I admitted, resting my head on his shoulder. Alex pressed a kiss to my temple. Not a dream. Though I have to say, if I'd known all it would take was asking you to put sunscreen on my back, I would have done it years ago. I laughed, turning to face him. And if I'd known all it would take was letting my hands wander a bit, I might have been braver sooner. I'm glad you were brave today, he said softly, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from my forehead. Though I have to say, you nearly gave me a heart attack when you started avoiding me afterward. I thought I'd crossed a line, I explained. That I'd ruined everything between us. The only thing you did was finally push us past a line we should have crossed ages ago. His eyes searched mine in the moonlight. No more holding back, okay? I want all of you, Jamie. The good, the bad, everything. I want that too, I whispered, leaning in to kiss him again, marveling at how natural it felt, as if we'd been doing this all along. When we finally broke apart, Alex stood and offered me his hand. We should probably head back. It's getting late. I took his hand, allowing him to pull me to my feet, but neither of us made a move to leave just yet. Standing there on the empty beach, the dying embers of the fire casting a soft glow around us, I felt a sense of rightness that I'd never experienced before. You know, Alex said, his arms wrapped around my waist, I had this whole plan for how I was going to tell you how I felt. There was going to be a fancy dinner, maybe some romantic music. Not me asking you to put sunscreen on my back and then having a frisbee interrupt the moment. I laughed, resting my forehead against his. I think it was perfect. Very us. Very us, he agreed, smiling. Speaking of which, is that what we are now? An us. The question hung in the air between us, full of possibility. I thought about all the moments that had led us here, study sessions that turned into deep conversations about life, movie marathons where we'd fallen asleep against each other, countless inside jokes and shared memories. And now, this new chapter beginning with sunscreen and stolen kisses by a bonfire. Yes, I said, feeling certainty settle over me like a warm blanket. We're definitely an us. Alex's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Good. Because I have a lot of plans for us, Jamie. Starting with taking you on a proper date tomorrow night. What did you have in mind? I asked, unable to stop smiling. That's for me to know, and you to find out, he teased, taking my hand as we finally began walking back up the beach. But I promise it will involve more than just asking you to put sunscreen on my back. Although, I said thoughtfully, that worked out pretty well in the end. Alex laughed, the sound carrying across the empty beach. It did, didn't it? Who knew sunscreen could be so life-changing? As we made our way back to the parking lot, hands intertwined and hearts full, I couldn't help but think about how the day had started, with me spreading my towel on the sand, watching Alex from a distance, never imagining that by nightfall, everything would change. All because he'd asked me to put sunscreen on his back, and my hands had been brave enough to travel south. Sometimes, the biggest journeys begin with the smallest steps, or in our case, with fingers that dared to cross a boundary that had been waiting to be crossed all along. And as Alex pulled me close for one more kiss before we got into his car, I knew that this was just the beginning of our story, a story that had been 3 years in the making and would hopefully continue for many more to come. The next morning, as we met our friends for breakfast at a beachside cafe, the teasing was relentless but good-natured. So, Mia asked with a mischievous grin, "Who's on sunscreen duty today?" Alex and I exchanged a look, both of us breaking into laughter. "I think we can handle it ourselves," Alex replied, his hand finding mine under the table. "Though I might need some help with those hard-to-reach places," I added, earning a chorus of groans and thrown napkins from our friends. As the conversation flowed around us, I found myself thinking about how often we let fear hold us back from the very things we want most. For 3 years, Alex and I had circled each other, both afraid of risking a friendship that meant everything to us. It had taken a bottle of sunscreen and a moment of courage to finally bridge the gap between what we were and what we could be. Sometimes, the greatest risk is not taking one at all. And as I looked at Alex, laughing with our friends in the morning sunlight, I knew that some risks were absolutely worth taking, especially when they led to the kind of happiness I now felt. A happiness as vast and full of possibility as the ocean stretching out before us, ready to be explored together, one wave at a time. Total_char_count, 18,746.